we're either understimulated or overstimulated. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new here. So today I want to talk about a topic that is, I want to say, near and dear to my heart because I fall into that category, and that is how to manifest when you are neurodivergent. Because even though, yes, technically our brains are kind of sort of set up the same, there are differences in the way that it operates and in the way that we should manifest as a result of that. Also, if you're new here, I do love assumption content, science-based of course, so if you like this kind of content, please make sure you like, subscribe, share it with someone that you might think would benefit from this video, and let's get right into it. So the difference between neurodivergent brains and neurotypical brains, and this is just in terms of what is important for manifestation, is the fact that our working memory does not function the way that it should. We have too many neurons and our brain is literally in overload 24/7. So if we're trying to learn something in a meaningful way, like most neurotypical people like to learn, we spend so much time trying to sort through all the information that we're getting and trying to make sense of what we're seeing that what we are actually supposed to learn goes right out the window. Which obviously also leads to us having a pretty short attention span, which unfortunately is kind of where the hacking of your brain comes in, because we really benefit from using our rote memory, which is unfortunately mindless repetition, which is why I was pushing it so much. I didn't even realize that that was why I was teaching it so much, only because I realized it works for me really well. But I also find myself losing interest pretty quickly because I just get bored and I feel like, ugh, why am I doing this? Because our mind is not stimulated, and this is the problem. We're either understimulated or overstimulated. It's very difficult to find that middle ground where we can mindlessly affirm while also being stimulated enough to keep it going over several days and sometimes weeks. So one thing you can do is include other learning techniques like visual learning. You can write it down if you are a scripter, if you like that. I personally love vision boards. And when I'm talking about a vision board, I'm not talking about your generic run-of-the-mill vision board like you see it. Even some coaches do, like the law of attraction coaches. I'm talking about super specific things. So the last vision board I've ever done where I really felt like I was manifesting things, it had a picture of an orange cat. And obviously, if you're not new here, you knew that I had Henry for a long time. I had the picture of a silver car. I got that exact silver car. So I was very specific in the things that I wanted. I printed out pictures that matched exactly what it is that I wanted to have, and I felt like my brain was able to manifest that a lot easier because I gave it a very strict set of rules and a very specific thing to focus on. If you are using motivational quotes, for example, like a lot of coaches like, or just a picture of somewhere nice, you want to go on vacation but you don't even know where it is, or any of those things, your brain will not be able to interpret it the way that you need it to. And this is why even generic affirmations, I hear some people say, oh, it doesn't matter, you can just affirm whatever and your brain knows what it means. Not every brain operates like that. Neurodivergent brains need very specific directions. So the more generic our affirmations are, the harder it is for our brain to actually know what it wants, because it always is looking for solutions and basically seeking a definition of what it is that we're manifesting. So if you're, for example, manifesting, I'm in a happy relationship, your brain will not take that in and say, oh, okay, we're in a happy relationship, let's fill in the gaps. Our brain will be like, well, who is it with? How long is it gonna take? How are you gonna show up in this relationship? What will you guys do? Your brain will just go insane trying to find these solutions. And that's when we then get to a point where we start to drift off into la la land. It happens to me a lot when I try to do sats. I will have this like super short scene, and having guided meditations really helps for that, by the way. Once I'm done with the scene and once the meditation is done, my brain just starts building this elaborate crazy story that just sometimes goes for weeks and months into what I was initially visualizing, which makes it very difficult for the brain then to capture anything and keep it and retain it. So if you are doing that, it will be much harder for you to manifest anything, which is why I always thought that visualizing doesn't work for me. And that's not really true, because technically it does work for me. It just takes a little bit of training to get your brain to a point where you are just visualizing what it is that you want and ignore everything else. You can train your brain to literally bring its attention back. You just have to tell it to do that. But that's also extra effort, so we're trying to go the path of least resistance, obviously. And rote memory is the way to go when you're neurodivergent. Taking small, simple affirmations, because we also have problems with memorizing words. So long sentences, huge problem. Lots of complicated words, huge problem. So it would be really good to take a sentence that is short, sweet, easy to memorize, easy for you to just retain whenever you need it, and then either record it or say it to yourself while you're doing something where you are in flow state. Now, if you don't know what flow state is, that's basically when you're doing something that would, I guess, be like the state akin to sleep. You're awake, obviously, but you are accessing the theta waves of your brain by doing something that you really enjoy, that you are literally zoning out on. That could be sewing, for example. It could be drawing. It could be puzzles. TV isn't really all that good for it because you're obviously also getting all the information from whatever it is that you're watching. And we're obviously trying not to do that because we don't want the affirmations that are on TV to kind of mess with what we're doing. Going for a walk. I mean, exercise. Exercise is always good. There's been some studies done that actually show that exercise does help your memory if you're neurodivergent. So if you want to exercise and affirm on the side, great, perfect, do that. But it's really vital for you to find something that allows you to be so into the task that you can just mindlessly affirm on the side, or have a tape running that will mindlessly affirm for you so that your brain gets the repetition that it needs to retain the information. And the thing is this, if you have a thought, most of the time it's not going to instantly manifest because the thought needs to become an assumption in order for it to manifest. And obviously assumptions are things that we expect and assume on a regular or repetitive basis. So if you only have one fleeting thought, that's why intrusive thoughts, for example, are really not, I know a lot of neurodivergent people have a lot of intrusive thoughts because we're not filtering them out. So I don't want you to have anxiety and think, oh, because I have intrusive thoughts, they're going to manifest. That's not how it works. They need to become an actual assumption. And even if you are repeating those thoughts over and over again, if you're consistently consciously reminding yourself that, well, it's never happened to me though, and it's just an intrusive thought, and kind of talk it away, you're not going to expect whatever it is that you're thinking about to actually become reality. Let's take an example. I was watching Teen Mom, and one of the teen moms, she was always talking about the fact that she will not pass her exams and that she's really terrified and scared. Her dad, very supportive dad, was talking about the fact that he knows she passed because she always does. And then her reply was, well, I know, that's an assumption. I know, but I'm still scared. So she had all these intrusive thoughts and all this anxiety, but it wasn't going to manifest because technically, consciously, and subconsciously, she knew that the assumption that she held was not the same as the intrusive thoughts that she had. Now let's go to a different scenario. I have someone in my family who consistently expects bad things to happen to them, like they're always getting sick or always getting injured or whatever the case may be. They, however, have a very specific way of talking about it. This is not an intrusive thought of, oh my God, I'm so worried I'm gonna get hurt. Their statement is, I always get hurt. It always happens to me and I expect it to happen to me. Don't need to be a rocket scientist to know that this person is consistently getting hurt because they turned an intrusive thought into an assumption, which then obviously regularly manifests. Not just because it's an assumption that they hold, but also because it's an assumption that they consistently repeat. So that's something that if you are in this position and you notice something is happening to you over and over again that is really negative, work on that. But let's give an example of a really good affirmation versus a not so good affirmation. And we're going to go with an SP because everybody wants an SP. So let's say I am in a loving, committed relationship with so-and-so. That would be a bad affirmation because it leaves so much room for interpretation. You have a very specific way of looking at relationships. And if you are, for example, someone who has been, let's say, a victim of narcissistic abuse, every relationship that you've been in was very loving and very great and very committed in the beginning. So your brain could trick you into thinking that this situation that you're in is what you want. But then when the other shoe drops, right, because you're waiting for it, subconsciously, you might end up with the same narcissistic relationship that you were in prior. A much better way of going about this, and this is just one example, would be, for example, picking a person. Now, this doesn't have to be a celebrity, but if you know of a celebrity that has a relationship that you want, and this is not whether their relationship really is like that or not, just from what it looks like to you and what it feels like to you. Let's say, I don't know, I think Kristen Bell, is that her name? And Dax Shepard, is that her husband? I don't know. From the way that it looks, they seem to have like a really cute and loving and nice relationship or whatever. If that's the kind of relationship that you want, you could, for example, say and affirm, I'm so happy, or it's so amazing. My relationship is exactly like their relationship. That gives you specific parameters of how your relationship looks and feels and kind of unfolds. Because if those are people that you follow regularly because you're fans of them or whatever, you're not going to have just one glimpse of what their relationship is like. You're going to have a lot of different scenarios that your brain can now pick from to paint this picture of what it is that you want. Because neurodivergent brains also have a problem with, creating stories and make sense of certain parts. So if you are trying to force that, you're going to be stuck and confused while doing that. But if you give your brain free rein, because it already has a picture that it's put together on its own with no specific direction, it will help your brain to process your affirmation in a way that it needs to for you to retain that. So let's say you have a bunch of cue cards and all of them have like a word and they're supposed to make a story. You're going to have problems doing that and making sense of that. But if you have cue cards with words that overall paint a picture, but they don't have to be in chronological order, and your brain can just pick and choose and then make a picture of, for example, ooh, happy, ooh, this, ooh, fun, ooh, whatever, healthy, whatever. And you put it together and then you can say, well, this is a happy, healthy, loving relationship. That is the way that your brain interprets information, and it will help you retain the information. So creating an assumption around that makes it a lot easier for you to get there faster than you trying to force your brain into making sense of something that at the end of the day, it's not going to make sense to you. Your brain is always going to run away from you. It's always going to start focusing on all kinds of other things that have nothing to do with what you are actually affirming, which is why it will take you so long to get what you want and see movement, because your brain doesn't know what information is important, which affirmation to actually retain, and what to do with that information. Another example would be, I am so healthy. That's a horrible affirmation for someone who is neurodivergent, because, well, I'm healthy. Okay, but what about this condition? Does that mean all conditions? But does that mean that I'm going to be healing my, let's say, in my case, right, it would be, oh, am I then healing my neurodivergency? Because that's kind of not what I want. I like being neurodivergent. So your brain just runs away from you. Affirming something to the extent of, let's say, I have a healthy period, right? Because that's what I've been affirming, right? No migraines, no this, that, and the other. That's a very specific affirmation that my brain knows what to do with. But last time, however, when I was affirming for it, I actually just affirmed, oh, I don't have a migraine. But I forgot the whole period part, so my period was still horrible. Like, I was in other pain that I haven't had in a while, which is why you need to just go through the trial and error to kind of pick apart and see, what is my brain actually interpreting? What is it actually talking about when I'm affirming this? And is this enough? Do I need to elaborate? What do I need to do? Do I need to actually affirm that I don't have a migraine and a light period? Like, whatever it is that you need to affirm in order for your brain to get the full story as best as it possibly can. Now, for example, I could also affirm that I am the same as my sister. She's never had a migraine in her life. She's never had any of these problems. She's very healthy. Her period's always been like 2 or 3 days. That would also help, because remember, as you can see, if I affirm I am just like my sister in that case, it combines all of those things that I want my brain to manifest for me with one sentence. If you are neurodivergent, you have the benefit and the ability to constantly be in your head, to constantly affirm, because you're always thinking about things. You have this ability to create wonderful stories and wonderful scenarios. You have the ability to manifest several things at once with absolute ease. It might be different for someone else who has to affirm for everything. You can manifest several things at once. Let's say you want to manifest marriage, you want to manifest a certain husband, and you want to manifest kids. Let's say Dax Shepard is your perfect husband. If you affirm that you have a husband like that, or a marriage like that, or a relationship like Kristen, you are in her shoes, and you also want the career because she has everything. You only need one affirmation to affirm for everything that you want, where other people might have to affirm for more things than once, because they need to, and this is the thing, I'm going to do research on it, I'm going to do a separate video on it, but neurotypical people benefit from meaningful learning, which is not the same as using your roto memory. And the thing is, even though repetition can work for them, for some of them, their brain is not set up in a way that they would benefit from repetition. So that's why, when you say, oh, you should just repeat, this is usually the advice that I give, because that works for me, and I didn't know any different prior to doing research. But I would say for most people, it's actually not the correct way to manifest, because your brain gets tired and your brain doesn't really know what to do with it, because you need a a meaningful way to study. There's lots of study techniques that you can even Google and research yourself. Like I said, I'm gonna make videos, but when I was Googling best memorizing techniques or best study techniques, all of the things that they told me I should do, I wasn't able to do because they were not meant for neurodivergent brains. Most study techniques out there are for neurotypical brains, and they all involve some sort of, memorizing this, but doing this, and then feeling this, and just like all kinds of things that typically we as neurodivergents don't really need. If you need to add a flow state to it, go and do that. But most techniques need a little tweaking of some kind. Like I said with SATs. SATs is only good if you are able to, technically during the day, I would say, if you sit down and you do SATs and you visualize, and then you can get up and immediately distract yourself with something else to the point where your brain does not have time to continue your visualization. If you do it at night, if you have the ability and you want to do it and you have the energy to be like, nope, going back here. No, we're going back here. Keep telling your brain we're not visualizing on top of that. That's great. If you don't want to do that, you might be prone to your brain just visualizing all kinds of stuff, just running away from you, creating these elaborate stories and elaborate scenes, which is something that can even happen to you if you're writing it down. If you're someone who's a storyteller, for example, and you're writing it down, your brain is always going to continue with the story, and all of a sudden you're writing a journal, like you're journaling a scene, and it's like 10 pages long. I've seen this before where people were like, oh, well, I wrote it down in my journal. It was like 20 pages. And I'm like, oh my God, your brain can't remember that. At least not immediately. It will be able to remember that at some point in time. But as you probably know, you are probably able to recite movies front to back, right? Or remember song lyrics from like 20 years ago. But it always comes with the fact that you did a lot of repetition in that case for your brain to be able to keep all of that information in. That's the thing. We take too much information in, it's too much at once. We will remember it at some point. But if you are, especially in an emergency situation and you need to manifest something quickly, this part of your brain is not your friend. And for me, I'm someone who learns through listening pretty well. Song lyrics, I'm pretty good with those, but I do like to look them up every now and again to make sure that I'm like in the correct mindset. And when I read them, it usually goes a lot quicker. Like I will hear them a couple times and then I will read them and then I will memorize them. Like my whole life is song lyrics and always has been, like since I was little. But the reason why I'm able to retain these song lyrics so quickly is because I hyper focus on songs. So if I find a song that I like, best believe I will play that on repeat for an hour straight. So for an entire hour, I have 3 minutes, right? 3 minutes of song lyrics playing in my head over and over and over again. And obviously with song lyrics, it's a little bit different and you can even do that with your affirmations, and I can only speak from my experience. If it's not a song that I'm like super into, I really don't care that much to listen to it on repeat for an hour. And the beauty of song lyrics is also obviously that you are memorizing something that you kind of don't have opposing thoughts to. If you are affirming for something, more times than not, you're doing it because you're trying to affirm something away that already has neural pathways laid down that you are trying to replace. You would probably have to listen to it for 8 hours straight, 2 to 3 days in a row for you to be able to memorize it. If you can do that, all the more power to you. But if not, try and use some of the tricks that I gave you to kind of hack your brain a little bit, and don't get discouraged when you are watching someone else's video, or you are reading someone else's book, or you're hearing someone else's success story, and they're telling you, well, this worked for me, and it's not working for you, because chances are they're probably neurotypical, or they just trained their brain in a way, due to maybe being good at school and learning how to mask in that way, to use those techniques that are technically not meant for us. I really hope you like this video. If you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. If you are currently manifesting something and you don't know if your affirmations are correct or if you need help with them, also leave a comment down below. I'm happy to answer them. I'm happy to give some advice if you need it, and I will see you in the next video.